Should we do the old? Should we do the plank of the day? I think we should do plank of the day. Let's do that.
Hello, it's plank of the day time.
Yes. So my plank of the day today has to do with the Gorton and Denton by-election, because we were told when I was in what you used to call mainstream media that you can't mention the fact that there's a by-election going on. You can't say who's running in it. You can't say anybody's name who's in it, any of the candidates. You can't talk about it. You can't mention it. You can't even ask people to call in and talk about it if you happen to be a broadcaster, right? And so therefore, I'm talking, of course, about Ofcom. Ofcom is the regulator of mainstream media broadcasting. They'd like to be the regulator of everything. They'd like to be the regulator of not just mainstream broadcasting, but mainstream newspapers and mainstream everything. They'd also like to put their ghastly sort of tentacles into the independent space as well. They haven't yet managed to get their hands on YouTube, but they'd like to. They'd like to stop us from talking about Gorton and Denton and the by-election that's going on even as we speak. Do you know why? Because they think that basically if I say something, it might influence the way that you might vote. But of course, if they ever did complain, Ofcom, I would just point them to the clock behind me, there, that one, which says it's 7 o'clock, which means technically I'm still allowed to talk about the Gorton and Denton by-election, because it was only after 7 when the polls opened, you're not supposed to talk about it. But how ludicrous, right, is a system which was invented clearly in the last century to cover all manner of what you might call biases and all manner of prejudices. And they were worried that if you, from the Labour government, for example, you might come onto my show and start banging on about how you should go out and vote for Labour. And that would somehow influence people. But I can tell you this, when I was in charge of the Welsh edition of the Mirror, for example, I remember that the Labour government at that time were concerned that they were going to lose Anglesey. And they made a entreaty to me at Welsh Labour. They said, look, is there anything you can do to help us win in Anglesey in the general election? And I said, yeah, I'm sure we can do something. So we basically stunted up a front page, which was entirely an advert for voting Labour. It literally was a front page of the Daily Mirror with a picture of Wales on it, and overprinted on it was Vote Labour. That was it. It was literally like a Vote Labour propaganda sheet, right? Now, there was no rule against us doing that. Ofcom didn't control newspapers. There was no regulator for newspapers. And so despite the fact that if you worked for the BBC or any other outlet of broadcasting in Wales, that you couldn't mention the fact that there was even an election going on, you could go to the newsagent or the local garage or the local petrol station or the local supermarket, pick up a copy of the Mirror, which would say on the front of it, Vote Labour, right? They didn't pay for it. They didn't offer us any bribes or anything like that. But we did it basically because that's what we wanted to do, because we certainly didn't want Plaid Cymru to win the seat. And so funnily enough, that was what happened. And at no time was there any problem. At no time, I think Plaid Cymru actually reported us to the Electoral Commission afterwards and said that it was completely unfair and completely out of order and it should never have been allowed. And the Electoral Commission dismissed the complaint and said, no, it's fine. It's a newspaper. They can do what they like. So how is it possible that you can run a newspaper campaign and push for somebody to vote in a particular way on the very day they're supposed to be voting, but if you are running a broadcasting outfit, you can't mention it? Just ridiculous, right? Crazy. So, Ofcom, for heaven's sake, get your act together, grow up, and come back to the 21st century, which is where we currently are. Not the 20th century, not the 19th century, not even, the mists of time, for heaven's sake, Stop telling people what they can't say or what they can't talk about, because that is never going to play well. So, Ofcom, you are plank of the day.
Hello, it's plank of the day time.
My paw is a lot better today. I told you the story, right? And you're supposed to go to get some antibiotics from the pharmacy. I mentioned this in the first hour, I think. And so I went and did my duty, went to the pharmacy. The woman behind the cash till said, I said, can I see the pharmacist? And she said, why? I said, well, I've got this finger, which is a bit, infected, and I just wondered if I could get some antibiotics. And she looked at it and she went, how long has it been like that for? And I said, well, a couple of days. She went, right, it's probably better if you see the pharmacist. I said, yep, that's why I came in, to see the pharmacist. And would you mind sitting down over there? So I went over there, but I didn't sit down because I was like, I didn't want to sit down. And I was in two minds, because you know how you go, I can't be arsed with this. And frankly, I'm quite annoyed already that I've had to wait, because there were sort of 2 or 3 people standing around. And I said to both of them, are you waiting to see the pharmacist? And they'd said yes. And in fact, what they meant was they'd come in to get a prescription filled and they were waiting for their prescription. Because this place, I kid you not, it's in East London near Bermondsey Station, is literally riddled with people who are taking out bags and bags and bags of free prescriptions, because they're all, relatively poor, I assume. Anyway, so I stand there for a bit and I'm sort of going, because Pooch and I are the same. I don't want to get involved in a fight with anyone. I don't want to shout at anyone. But you start to feel yourself getting wound up, you're kind of going, and my fingers like throbbing because it was quite sore. And then suddenly the pharmacist sort of shouts across, yes, sir, I'll see you now. So I go, all right. Go over there, show him my finger, which was really swollen at that point, and it was covered in a sort of yellow pus around my nail. Sorry to say that on this time in the morning. And I showed it to her, and she went, how long have you had it like this? I said, well, a couple of days. I said, I said, I've had it before. It's a sort of hangnail problem, really. I said, basically, it's just become infected because I didn't, I didn't expect it to do this, but I didn't know how to stop it. When I woke up this morning, it was just, quite swollen and quite sore. And she went, well, you probably need antibiotics. I said, yep, that's why I've come in. And she said, well, I can't give them to you. And I was like, oh. I said, I thought that you were now empowered as a pharmacist to do things that doctors normally would do. And she said, yeah, I think you should see the doctor. I said, well, I haven't really got a lot of time. And she said, well, sometimes it's good to make time. And I'm like, really? Why can't you just give me some bloody antibiotics and be done with it? But she wouldn't. She was like, I said, I thought the whole point of the new rules in the NHS was that pharmacists were supposed to be able to now take some of the weight off the doctor's surgery by giving you things that you didn't have to go to the doctor to get. And she looked at me like I was talking Japanese, And I said, can't you just do this for me? And then that way everybody's happy. I don't have to worry about going to the doctor. I don't have to sit in a waiting room. I don't have to queue up on the phone. I don't have to, clog up the system. You could just give me what I want and I can walk away and everybody's happy. And she went, no, you've got to go to the doctor. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And anyway, so I didn't go to the doctor because I couldn't be asked. And I thought to myself, if I wake up this morning and it's still bad, I'll go to the private clinic, which is not far from London Bridge, because I thought I'll do that and that'll be fine. But what I did do was I discovered that I brought home from America, because America is so much more advanced than we are medically. And I had some ointment, which hadn't even been opened, which I'd bought when I was at CVS in America. Mike's on a meltdown. I haven't started yet. No, this is just me telling the story. I'll tell you, I'll do the meltdown in a minute. I bought this, or my sister bought it for me, bacterial antibiotic ointment. So I thought, oh, that's good. I'll maybe try putting that on. So I was a bit knackered as well, because I've been out for lunch with my son and his mother. So I put it a bit on my finger and went to sleep and woke up, and actually, I could feel that it had gone down a bit. And I thought, this is great. And so then I did what other people had suggested, which was to plot it in, hot, salty water, which was quite painful. And then that seemed to help as well. And then I put more ointment on a couple more times. And so when I woke up this morning, the green pussy bit has disappeared altogether. It's still a little bit swollen, but nothing like it was yesterday. And so I basically cured myself. I think I should send the NHS a bill, don't you? Because I've saved them probably hundreds of pounds by just sorting myself out. And how many of you are doing that? Because you see from that ticker tape that's going, doubling of the cash input into the NHS has made no difference at all. The NHS, according to Lord Bethell, former health secretary under the Tories, the budget has gone from 100 billion to 200 billion and hasn't made any it hasn't made any difference. So literally, the NHS is just as bad as it always was, even though we're now spending more time. Now, this question comes, I suspect, from somebody not a million miles away from the organisation that we run. Was your finger throbbing because you handled your Viagra? Listen, one, I'm not saying I've got any Viagra. Two, I don't think the coated tablets actually have any effect on whether you handle them or not. And you're not supposed to put them up your... No, I'm not going to say that. Yeah, it's not a suppository. Anyway,